Hey guys, I may have gone a little overboard on the wood chips, but these are great for the garden. So here's what we're going to do with them. I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Let me show you a little bit about wood chips. We're going to talk about those a little bit today so that you can make an informed decision on your use of wood chips in the garden. So a couple weeks ago, I reached out to a local landscaping company who does pretty much everything you can think of in the yard. And I asked about leaves because I wanted some fall leaves to use in the vegetable garden beds to help break down and become good compost. And he also asked if I wanted any wood chips because they do jobs for cutting down trees. And I said, of course I do, because this stuff is great for the garden. There's a lot of uses for it, whether as a top dressing or eventually as a mulch when it all breaks down. So I did say, sure, bring it on. And he brought it on, that is for sure. This one over here, that pile did not come from him, this first one on the left, but all the rest did. That's about 4 truckloads of mulch and leaves. And the other thing that he brought was this here. You can kind of see it looks like a big cake right now, but this is some leaves that were left on the truck that had gotten wet. It rained on top of it, and so they started breaking down. And what's really great about these leaves is how finely broken down they came. You can see this. I'm not even going to have to chop up any of this with my mower, which is what my plan was. I was going to get the full-size leaves and go over it a few times with a mower with a bagging attachment and break it all down myself. This is ready to go. It's awesome. So both leaves and wood chips are considered brown materials, and that means that they contain a lot of carbon. Carbon is one of those essential elements that plants use. Everything organic uses carbon. So what you have to do is blend that together with nitrogen. You need to have a good mix of materials in order to create a good balance. The microbes use that nitrogen to break up things. So that's why sometimes when people talk about wood chips that leach out nitrogen, that's probably not the correct way to think about it. It's more correct to say that they lock it up a little bit, that they immobilize it. And what's really happening is that the microbes use that nitrogen that's coming out of here to help their processes and break things down, and eventually it goes back into the soil. That's why people say don't use fresh wood chips for a lot of different things. So wood chips and leaves make a great resource for building up organic matter in your garden, in your soil, and especially when you're starting fresh like we are here on this property, it's going to be a very useful resource. Now, what you want to do though is make sure that you're using it for the right purposes. You don't want to accidentally pull too much nitrogen out of the soil around some of your prized plants or your annuals, in which case that might actually harm those plants. So in the long run, what you want to do is let the materials break down. So the first number one use for this stuff is to just compost it. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. You can use compost bins for it. You can let it sit in place and then turn it periodically. You can mix those materials. You can add in stuff to the compost to help make it break down better. These things can also be used, the wood chips, for a top dressing. So if you're wanting to mulch around some established trees, it shouldn't be a problem to use this as a top dressing because it's only going to borrow the nitrogen out of the soil for the top layer of the soil. It shouldn't be a problem overall for that tree. I've used it for several beds over here where we've got some more mature plants that have gone in. So another thing you can do with these wood chips is to use them in your gardens as pathways. Once the wood chips have broken down enough, you can toss them into your beds and they become a good organic matter. And what's really cool about some of these wood chips is they will absorb some water and release the water. So you can help improve some of your water issues that you might be having in the heat of the summer to kind of moderate that a little bit better so it's not evaporating as quickly. So when using these leaves, you want to make sure that you've got them broken down as small as possible because the microbes, they like the surface area. The more surface area, the quicker they're going to break things down. A leaf like this is going to break down a little bit slower than multiple leaves that would have the same volume because there's more edges to them, there's more surface area for them to eat off of and continue their processes. And the same goes true for wood chip mulch. You want to make sure that it's broken down as good as you possibly can. And now beggars can't be choosers sometimes, so if you've got a tree company coming and dumping wood chips, sometimes you have to take what you can get. In this case here, we've got some really finely broken up wood chips that are going to do great as a compost. One of the first things I started doing when I got all this was to bring some loads into the compost bins. And we're going to mix these with all kinds of food scraps from the garden, grass clippings, whatever we can to try to increase the speed of decomposition for the compost beds. But as you can see right here, we've got some wood chips, we've got leaves in here. We're mixing it all together as we go and dumping it in, so it will hopefully do a really good job breaking down. So right here you can see a rough outline of what will eventually be a nice perennial bed outside the formal vegetable garden. And I've just used some rocks here to create a border. It's very rough right now. I'm going to go back through and readdress all this stuff eventually. But in the inside of this bed, I've used the wood chips and the leaves to create a lot of organic matter in here, and I'm going to let this break down over the winter time, and we'll add some amendments to it, probably some grass clippings here and there. We'll probably add some things like blood meal, which contains a lot of nitrogen, to help speed along the breakdown process and get this into a nice soil as quickly as we can. To speed up the breakdown of the materials, there's a lot of things you can do, one of which, the main one, is to add nitrogen to it so the microbes are being fed. You can do that in a lot of ways: grass clippings, blood meal, add fertilizers that have a high nitrogen content to the wood chips or the leaves, whatever you're working with. Now, the other thing you can do is make sure that you're aerating your piles. So that means turning it over, just flipping it, take from the edge, throw it on top, and just continually keep doing that. The air that goes inside helps those microbes to do their processes. So you also want to make sure that you're keeping your piles wet. They need to get regular moisture, because if they dry out a little bit, the microbes don't have what they need to work with. And with the water thing, you do not want to oversaturate them, so you want them to be kind of a moderate level of moisture. You don't want to get them too wet and soggy, because that can lead to an anaerobic process that you probably don't want to have for this. It leads to a very stinky pile. Another great thing you can do is to add compost that you've already gotten started. What's great about that is it contains a lot of microbes in there that can help assist with the process. Plus, it also will help balance the nitrogen issue and provide some more nitrogen into the compost. The other thing that you can do is add manure. So if you happen to be an owner of chickens, you've got a great supply of some stuff in there that you can toss in and mix with your wood chips and really speed along that process. Other manures will work as well, but chicken tends to be very hot, so that's why I mentioned it first. But you can use all kinds of manures mixed together with your wood chips to do a very great job at breaking them down. So the piles of wood chips are probably going to find their way back here as a top dressing over this area. This is where we've got a lot of our fruiting shrubs. We've got several blueberry bushes that we planted. We've got a blackberry and a fig that I just got off the discount racks this past week, and they got planted in too. So we're going to use this. We're going to put a thick layer of mulch over top of this so that it will be a pretty weed-free area for our shrubs and very, very small trees that we're going to have as part of the orchard. And then the rest of the vegetable garden, this fence is all going to go here, and we'll put up something much nicer. But we're going to use those wood chips in there as well. It just depends on how much we have. Now, if we have extra left over, they'll go in the wood pathways that we've got through the woods that lead back to our pawpaw trees. So as you can see, we've got a lot of work to do with these piles here. I've moved probably 10 to 12 wheelbarrow loads with a 6 cubic foot wheelbarrow, and it barely looks like I've dented this. So this is going to last a little bit. Some of this is going to sit here for quite a while we gradually get it out, and it's going to continue to decompose in its normal processes, which is a good thing, because we eventually want it all to be decomposed and turning into nice, rich compost for the vegetable garden. You can never have too much compost. So I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Appreciate you watching. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Growing the Home Garden.